U.S. President Joe Biden has made his first public comments since he struggled in the first debate ahead of November's presidential election. Directly addressing concerns about his age, Democrats have expressed unease at the president's shaky debate performance, with party insiders saying some of his answers triggered panic. Biden's campaign insists the president will not step down as the Democratic candidate and that he will debate Donald Trump again in September.
I don't know what you did last night, but I spent 90 minutes on a stage debating a guy who has the morals of an alley cat. Did you see Trump last night? My guess he set, I mean it sincerely, a new record for the most lies told in a single debate. He lied about the great economy he created. He lied about the pandemic he botched, killing millions of people. He closed businesses, he closed schools, losing their homes, people all over this country. America was flat on its back. So I told Trump that he was just one of two presidents in American history who left office with fewer jobs than he started. Herbert Hoover was the other one. That's why I call him Donald Herbert Hoover Trump. I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious. Well, I know. Well, I don't. Folks, I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. I know right from wrong. And I know how to do this job. I know how to get things done. And I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up. I know what it took to take our economy from the depths of the pandemic to where it is today, the strongest economy in the world.
In another story, voters across mainland France have today been casting their ballots in the first round of an exceptional parliamentary election that could put the country's government in the hands of nationalist far-right parties for the first time since the Nazi era. The outcome of the two-round election, which will wrap up July 7, could impact European financial markets, Western support for Ukraine, and how France's nuclear arsenal and global military force are managed. Many French voters are frustrated about inflation and economic concerns, as well as President Emmanuel Macron's leadership, which they see as arrogant and out of touch with their lives.
It's important to try to get back to some kind of normality, at least what I consider normal, maybe not everyone does, and to try to block extremism.
La sécurité du pays.
The security of the country. Nowadays, we live in a world at war. We would like to escape all of this, re-establish order and have a calmer situation. It is important for me, because I am a woman, and we haven't always had the right to vote. Because I am a black woman, it is even more important for me to come. A lot is at stake today, so it was important for me to come and vote. These are not the most popular elections.
I'm now being joined from our Rise Abuja studio by author, international affairs analyst, and development expert Achike Chude for an overview of developments in Kenya, the United States, and France. Thank you very much, Achike Chude, for joining me on this Day Live Sunday Talk Show. Well, Achike, let's start right away with the United States. your assessment of the first debate happening rather early ahead of November 5 election between former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden. What's your assessment? Who won? Who lost? How? Why?
Yeah, let me just begin by saying that that these are two candidates that Americans would have preferred not to run for the election in the United States on account of their age, essentially. Biden is about 81, Trump is about 3 or 4 years younger than him. But unfortunately, or whether fortunately, both of them are running, so Americans will just have to contend with those two. As for the debate itself, I think this is one of the most watched debates ever due to the circumstances of the American political system right now, the deep division and the fractious divisions in the United States. Of course, obviously along ideological lines and cultural lines. And so the battle line was drawn. I think Trump started by taunting Biden, and Biden eventually accepted the debate. And then the rules for the debate were drawn up, and the CNN, part of the mainstream media that is pro-Biden was chosen, and people were worried that the anchors might not be exactly objective. But I think it was clear at the end of the 90 minutes debate that they were, reasonably, objective. Now, a lot of people, in fact, people said that Biden was the one that people were watching out for, because so much had been said about Biden, his cognitive abilities, and the fact that people felt that he was declining. And of course, we saw the videos that were being circulated everywhere, which the Democratic Party said was described as deep fakes. So it was an opportunity for Biden to show not just Americans, but the entire world that he's up to the task. And I think that is where the disappointment really, arose from. People expected a Biden that they saw at the State of the Union address that was very aggressive, though there were speculations, of course, unproven, that they had enhanced him one way or the other with some drugs. But that, like I said, is unproven. But he was very active during the State of the Union address. And after that State of the Union address, there was a bump in those who felt that he had moved the needle in terms of their expectations and in terms of the polling. But yesterday, this last debate was exceedingly very disappointing for a lot of people. They did not see a commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world. They did not see somebody, that is in charge. And in most cases, a lot of people were worried about him and were a bit angry that the Democratic Party could bring him out, and that the wife could also subject him to that kind of ridicule. That is the way they saw it. I think he did his best. But under the circumstances, there was no way he was going to stand up to Trump. Trump, he had this way of coming in, and especially when he lost his thoughts. Then Trump came in with a clinch and said, I don't know what he's talking about. He doubts whether even Biden knows what he's talking about. And so it is very, very clear that Biden came out the worst for it. And the reaction, especially from the mainstream media, and the people aligned with Biden, donors and the supporters of Biden, was extremely, very, very disappointing. And that is why all of a sudden the talk about whether he can stay the course or not came up. And that because they are afraid that if he continues to run, that they might lose that election to Trump. So that's why there is a talk that perhaps they could have somebody that is younger. In fact, I think it was Nikki Haley, that talked about it, that eventually he's going to be replaced. That talk has been on for quite some time. And people were saying, is it that the Democratic Party set him up for this failure so that they could be justified in moving against him? So far, you can see from his reaction, he believes that, yes, he might have done badly in the debate, but that he's capable of rising to the occasion. But the good thing on his own, good thing for him really is that the major party leaders like Nancy Pelosi, former Speaker of the House, Chuck Schumer, Obama, Bill Clinton, have not openly begun to call for his replacement, even though the Washington Post had done that and some other newspapers had also done the same thing. But until the big wigs begin, to do that publicly, then I think to some extent, one can say that perhaps they might allow him to stay the course.
Okay, Achike, well, let's look at it another way. I mean, in 2012, President Barack Obama had difficulties in his first debate against Mitt Romney of the Republican Party, but he came back and put up a much better performance. Now we've seen President Biden, waking up afresh after the debate. I mean, I guess American presidents, having spent 4 years giving orders and, controlling the room, probably have it a bit difficult when they are now in front of an audience that is asking them questions. Isn't there a possibility that in September, we're likely to have much better performance from President Biden? I mean, Biden it may have been a testy debate.
Yeah.
He may have been struggling, but he can improve. But I'd like you to talk about the man you said did well. That's President Trump. He was lying all through.
Yeah.
He got away because President Biden could not pin him down to his many lies, maybe except on 2 occasions, about being a man of no morals, and alley cat and all of that, and about January 6th attack on the Capitol. How about a man who wants to be president who just lies all through? Shouldn't we worry more?
Yeah, but I think we should be talking about 2 people who lie. One lies more because, I mean, the fact checkers came out. The fact checkers came out with the fact that Donald Trump lied about 30 times and Joe Biden lied about 9 times. So it's about who lied more or who lies more. So I don't know whether the person who lies once is as good as or better than the person who lies 10 times. Perhaps you could call both of them liars, and then maybe you could call Donald Trump the bigger liar. The reality was, I think my problem with Donald Trump is not just in the fact that there were some statements he made that were not factually correct, but in the fact that there are some questions that he deliberately did not, answer, even when the anchors brought those questions back again. He deliberately, for whatever reason, chose not to answer. He did not answer the question on Russia, what he intended to do, for instance, when he comes in. Only that when he comes in, even before he takes over, the war in Russia, between Ukraine and Russia, he will bring it to, a stop. Apart from that, I think what people were looking out for, it was not so much about policy. Yeah, they talked a bit about policy. But I think that what helped him was the issue of immigration. And that was Biden's weakest, point, really, because right now, with what is going on, with over about 11 million people entering America illegally, it became a problem. But beyond that is the fact that, and that's why there's a lot of angst among the Democrats, that the biggest talking point, the strongest talking points of the Democrats, that Biden was not able to take advantage, and that is when it comes to the issue of reproductive rights. And Trump was able to stand up to that and was talking about term limits for abortion and all of that. So that's part of the anger of the Democratic Party. But you're also right, because I think Obama, you are absolutely right about the very first performance against Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney took him to the cleaners, but he came back very strongly, and was able to exact a revenge on Mitt Romney because he beat him decisively in the second election. And that's what he was saying to Biden, that bad debates do happen, but that he's capable of bouncing back. But I'm sure that before that second debate, if it does happen in September, you will hear people from Trump's camp asking that there should be a drug test for all of them. Trump had earlier said that he was going to submit himself to a drug test, but is the Biden camp going to do the same? So these are some of the things back and forth, lots of falsehood here and there, speculations here and there, but it's all in the order of politics. It's the way politicians roll, if I will use that expression. And they have no rules, really, when it comes to elections. And just like, in any other country, except that perhaps some other countries, they could do it more decently. But American election for quite some time, American politics has been, polluted by the deep, I think by a lack of maturity of the politicians. It's not the kind of politics that was played in the 70s and in the 80s. You have politicians now that do not show the same level of maturity that was shown by the politicians across both divides in the past. And that's why there's so much rancor.
Okay,
and,
Achike,
the distrust. Yeah.
I agree with you. 90 minutes of back and forth between both candidates. And in any case, the Republicans can't talk about abortion convincingly. After all, it was under President Trump that Roe versus Wade, which is the locus classicus in that matter, was upturned in 2022. And President Trump lied about the number of immigrants who have entered the United States through the Mexico border. He said 18 million. That's not true. It's about 4 million. And
that's not true.
What's his name? President Biden is strong on the economy, on inflation and all of that. But let me ask you, since we're talking about debates, now about this time too, we had the debate in London between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak, and the focus on issues. Now, looking at these two processes in the United States and also in the UK, what do you think are the immediate lessons that we as Nigerians can learn? Because our people come and become president, nobody even wants to debate anything.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to learn, and that is because, again, these are the countries that a lot of us use as a standard of measurement when it comes to certain things within the polity. But the nature and the character of our politicians is that they choose the ones that they want to work with, they want to run with, and then those ones that they feel might not be to their advantage, they discard. But you can look at, see the level of debate that it takes place in those other countries. That gives you an idea of the level of maturity, and knowledge and ability of the politicians. That they know that you don't run away from debates, because debates have a way of convincing, especially the independents, people who have not exactly made up their minds. They want to look at these debates. They want to be able to make their minds up from these debates. But I think part of the problem essentially is that Nigerian politics is not driven essentially by strong ideological compass, by a strong ideological compass. While that of, so it's either you're on the right or either you're on the left. What do our politicians stand for? You cannot, in terms of pigeonholing them into, specific ideological realms. I think it is very difficult. And that's why, if one of those things we have noticed about Nigerian politics is it is always easy for a politician to move from party A to party B. The following day, he moves to party C. Next day, he comes back to party A. Because it's not about the belief of the party. It's not about the ideology. It's not about their philosophy. These are the things that motivate politicians. In the more developed countries of the world that we are talking about. In Nigeria, it is a completely different thing. But debate is key. Debate is important. And perhaps, again, the weakness of the Nigerian political system might also be in the fact that the vast majority of our people are not sufficiently, do I say intellectually equipped? A lot of them are ignorant, and then primordial politics, is what rules at the end of the day. The deep fractious divisions, within the polity, our fault lines, which the politicians have always used to devastating effect, to serve their own purposes and not for the people. So when we need to begin to have a crop of people, of politicians, who should understand what the ideals of government should entail, what politics should entail, in line with the constitutional provision that the major reason why people get to power is to provide for the welfare of the Nigerian state and the security of the people of the country.
Chude, it's been a very interesting week in Kenya, with the parliament trying to force through a finance bill 2024, part of the content of which was to impose VAT, value-added tax on bread, up to 16%. 16% VAT also on petroleum products, and a long list, of taxes, through which the Kenyan government, on the advice of the IMF, wanted to raise $2.3 billion to address fiscal deficits and all of that. And the people took to the streets. They said they don't want the finance bill or act, whatever they call it. The president has reversed himself. Yeah. And now the people are even saying, no, Ruto must go. That they don't even just want any bill. They want Ruto to go. What's your take on the Kenyan situation, particularly about leadership?
Yeah, the people are feeling euphoric about the modest gains they have made, and the fact that the government was able to say, yes, we are willing to walk back on what we said we were going to do, because we are listening to you and you have shown, a lot of capacity. So we have no choice than to listen to you. And that is why Ruto had to go back to the parliament to get the parliament to change course. The IMF had told them, talking about the revenue to GDP ratio, that they could have about 25%, revenue to GDP ratio, so that they could do that. So the Kenyan government had no choice. They felt that to be able to raise the kind of money that they needed for social services and the infrastructural development, that can take it off the people. But the issue is, which people are you taking it off from? Long impoverished people in a country where over 50% of the youthful population have no job, have no employment, and all that, and you keep on increasing taxes. So I think that the people had had enough of it. And this problem, this dynamic started from last year. Then it was, I think, Ruto's opponent in the last election that was able to mobilize people. But now this is a pan-Kenyan movement that cuts across ethnic, tribal divide, and has become pan-Kenyan. It has become a national issue. And so, yes, the government is trying to revise the course. But the thing about this is that you don't allow it to start. Because when it starts and the people are able to push back the barriers, they feel buoyed by the confidence. It's a pity that about 22 people had been killed in the process. But it has gotten to a level where the people themselves have become emboldened to change the initial demands, for removal of these taxes, to begin to make a political statement that Ruto has to resign or Ruto has to be removed from power. I think that is where they are going to hit a logjam, because at that level, you are giving the president no choice than to put all the resources on ground to make sure that he stays in power. But I think this is also a good thing, because, again, Ruto has made it clear to the political leaders in Kenya that they need also to begin to look at their own lifestyles, because that has been part of this, engagement, by the people of Kenya, that you are imposing so much hardship, on the people, and meanwhile, you have not lifted a finger to make any sacrifice. Your lifestyle remains the same, regardless of the poverty that we are experiencing in Kenya. So this is the kind of narrative that we see across the land in Africa. And so we must have a change. The people have shown capacity that they can actually fight back, and that they can actually break the barriers of ethnicity and religious divide, and come together in a united, manner to fight for a common cause. So it is left for the government to look for how they can manage the situation. Obviously, the economic situation still persists. The government still has to look for a way, perhaps other ways, to be able to make up for the deficit that they will be losing as a result of the protests of the Kenyan people. But again, it's about putting on the thinking cap. We cannot continue to have a continent that is rich in resource, not just in natural resources, but human resources, but always wallowing in poverty and going cap in hand to the international community to borrow money, which ultimately, at the end of the day, a lot of these monies get, stolen through corruption. So they must do something about the corruption. They must do something about, governance. Give the people the kind of governance that they expect. It's why they elected you to power. It's unfortunate because Ruto is just how many months in power. But then
2 years.
He is the one, he has to bail the cat. He is the one in the kitchen, and so he has to bail the cat.
Okay, well, let's go to France. Today, France goes to the polls in snap elections called by President Macron. Legislative Assembly elections, 577 seats up for grabs in the lower assembly. But the big issue in France is about the far right. Marine Le Pen's national rally. They did well early June in the parliamentary elections for the European Parliament. Now, Macron has called a snap election, hoping that he will be able to gain an advantage, given the system that they have in France, a two-vote, system for the legislative assembly. But do you think the rest of the world should be worried about the rise of the far right in Europe? Because that is a big concern. And this is a national rally, a party that is anti-Semitic, a party that is against Islam, a party that is even against the idea of the Eurozone.
Yes, I think there is cause to worry, among the political establishment in Europe, because the possibility of NATO and the EU being casualties, is always there. Of course, these are parties that have a little regard for European unification, really. But this has been, a project in the works for decades. Before, it used to be Jean Le Pen, the father of Marie Le Pen, who for decades tried to become, the French president with his with far-right, ideas. And but of course, the political establishment in France, made sure that they kept him out and his party. And so, whenever it needed alliances, for instance, from different political parties to keep them out, these alliances were forged, always forged. Whether with Mitterrand, whether with Lionel Jospin, whether with Giscard d'Estaing, we had all of this to keep them out. But there could not be a better time than now. But it has been coming because the last series of elections in France we have seen an increase in the number of seats obtained by the far right. So they have been on the move. But in fairness to Marine Le Pen, she has tried to shed herself and detoxify her party, which was formerly called the National Front, to now the National Rally. And she has tried to win it of some of this anti-Semitic tag that the party has been, tagged with over the years. And then the relationship again between her and Russia and Putin, which is to some extent one would say cordial. But in the context of what is going on in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, she has also tried to distance herself from her relationship with Russia, and she has been also less toxic when it comes to issues of the European Union and NATO. So I think she has done this knowing that she also needs to appeal to moderates in France. And then, of course, you look at the crisis again that has brought this about, the economic crisis, the issue of immigration, the series of protests that you have had in France, not just in mainland France itself, but in some of the islands, one or two islands in the archipelago, in the French archipelago, where citizens, but who are not essentially French people, have risen in protest for over a period of time. So there's been a lot of problems in France, in the French society, and people have been debating whether this issue of this policy of assimilation has actually worked. Of course, you know that when the French came calling in Africa, there was this policy of assimilation that they had used that differentiated them from that of the British to make the African much more French than African. But with what is going on in France, with a series of riots, especially in quarters that are being populated by people from northern part of Africa, people have begun to ask questions whether that has actually, worked. So people were surprised that the French president Macron could actually, because he still has about 3 years before elections, but I think he was worried about the very good gains that the National Front under Marine Le Pen had gained in the European Parliament. And so he needed to put his cards on the table. Of course, without consulting some of his allies, they were upset that he called for a snap election. But I think it's a gamble that he has taken. Whether that gamble will pay off is a different thing. But if it doesn't pay off, and then you have the left and then the far right gaining as much as 289 seats in the French Parliament, then there will be a majority. And that will spell a lot of problem for French, life as we know it, and their interaction with the rest of the world, especially in Europe. That would be a bit of a problem. Of course, we have seen what has been going on in Europe. In Italy, we have, somebody from the right. In parts of, I think, the Scandinavia, Belgium and some of those other, countries too. We have some of them also rising and taking, and absolutely eliminating the previously known establishment. And of course, as a result of issues over immigration, most especially over immigration, because a lot of these citizens, the citizens of these countries, are holding immigrants responsible for a lot of things. True or false, it's a different thing. For crimes and the kind of pressure that is put on social infrastructure in those other places has been problematic. And that's why you see some of them now beginning to move towards the right, perhaps believing that if the centrist governments in those places or the liberal governments in those places were not able to solve their issue, perhaps it is better to close the door and then try to see whether they can solve this other party can solve their problems. But it's a problem. It's worrisome, I think, for the whole of Europe, really.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Achike Chude, for joining us on this Live Sunday Talk Show.